The bright lights of Morning Horizons bathed the studio in a warm, optimistic glow. Every weekday, millions tuned in for the show's blend of celebrity interviews, current affairs, and just enough gossip to keep social media buzzing. But today, something in the air felt heavier. Behind the scenes, Olivia Ward, the show's celebrated host, was rehearsing her lines for the special guest segment. Her hair perfectly styled into glossy waves, framed a face known for its charm and control. Olivia had built her career on being calm under pressure, the kind of anchor who could smile through chaos. The guest for today's show was Grant Mason, a best-selling author and former journalist who had recently gone viral for his controversial new book, The Hidden Lens: How Media Creates and Destroys Icons. The book had hit nerves across the entertainment industry, calling out talk show hosts, celebrities, and producers by name, though Grant insisted it wasn't personal. But Olivia had taken it personally. One of the chapters, The Queen of Soft Lies, was rumored to be about her. Online sleuths had pointed out uncanny similarities. The same network, same background, same signature phrase she used at the end of every show. Let's keep it real. Now, Olivia had a choice. Ignore the tension and play the role of the gracious interviewer or confront Grant on air. Her producer had warned her not to make it personal. Just stick to the script, Liv, keep it professional. The views will come from the debate, not the drama. But as the studio clock ticked closer to showtime, Olivia's stomach tightened. She had a point to prove, to her audience, to her critics, and maybe to herself. The countdown began. We're live in 3, 2, 1. The familiar jingle played, and Olivia turned to the camera with her practiced warmth. Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Morning Horizons. We have a very special guest today. Someone whose words have stirred up quite the conversation. The camera cut to Grant Mason, seated opposite her. He looked calm, even amused, like a man stepping into a storm he already knew how to navigate. He wore a simple gray suit, no tie, and that faint smirk that could either disarm or infuriate. Olivia continued. Grant Mason joins us to talk about his new book, The Hidden Lens. Grant, thank you for being here. Thanks for having me, Grant replied smoothly. I didn't expect such a warm welcome given the headlines. Olivia's smile froze for half a second. Well, we're all about honesty here, she said, crossing one leg over the other. And I think our viewers appreciate a little truth, even when it's uncomfortable. Grant nodded. That's good to hear, because that's what the book's about, an honesty, especially in places where it's been replaced by performance. There was a pause. Just a few seconds of silence, but the audience could feel the shift. Olivia leaned in slightly. Performance? You think people like me, like this show, aren't authentic? Grant shrugged. Not just this show. But you have to admit, television has become more about narrative than news. It's all smiles, all spin. Sometimes I wonder if the audience ever gets the full picture. The control room watched nervously. One of the producers whispered, cut to B-roll, but the director shook his head. No way, this is gold. Olivia tilted her head, the polite smile gone now. So just to be clear, are you saying I'm part of the problem? Grant gave a faint, almost sympathetic laugh. Olivia, I think we're all part of it. But yes, you represent a system that sells comfort instead of truth. I'm not attacking you personally. I'm just describing what I see. Her jaw tightened. You wrote about me in your book. You used my catchphrase. You even described my set. You don't call that personal? Grant's expression didn't change. I described a type. If people connected it to you, maybe it's because you've built that image so clearly. The audience gasped softly. Someone in the control room muttered, This is getting hot. Olivia leaned forward now, no longer the charming host but the woman behind the brand, the one who'd fought her way up through years of early mornings and glass ceilings. Grant, I've spent 20 years giving people hope. You come on my show selling cynicism and call it truth. Maybe you just enjoy tearing people down because you couldn't make it in front of the camera yourself. The words landed like a slap. Grant blinked, then chuckled softly. You see? That's exactly the defense the system uses. Turn criticism into character assassination. Maybe you should have read the book before interviewing me. The crew held their breath. Olivia's producer spoke through her earpiece. Liv, pull back, move on to the next question. But she didn't. Instead, Olivia smiled. That kind of calm that only comes before a storm. Oh, I read every word, she said quietly. and I think our viewers deserve to hear what you really meant when you wrote about the Queen of Soft Lies. Grant's smirk faded. Are you sure you want to go there? He asked. Olivia looked straight into the camera. We're already there. The live chat began exploding. Viewers could sense it. This wasn't scripted. And it wasn't going to cool down anytime soon. And somewhere off-screen, a producer whispered the words that would define the next hour of television. Keep it rolling. This is history. The air inside the studio thickened until it felt like sound itself had weight. Every camera light, every shuffle from the crew behind the glass seemed to hum with static. Grant Mason leaned back in his chair, one arm slung casually over the armrest, the other resting on his book. Olivia Ward sat upright, shoulders squared, eyes locked on him. She could feel her heartbeat pressing against the microphone clipped to her blouse. Let's talk about that chapter, she said. The Queen of Soft Lies, your words, not mine. Grant gave the faintest nod. Go ahead. You wrote, she smiles while she edits the truth, convincing millions that comfort is courage. That's not just a critique of media. That's an accusation. Grant tapped the edge of the book. It's an observation. You have to admit, it sounds familiar, doesn't it? Olivia's eyes narrowed. You're twisting things for attention. You came here hoping for a reaction, and you're getting one. Across the control room, monitors flickered between camera angles, close-ups of Olivia's tightening jaw, Grant's cool expression, audience members whispering to one another. The producer muttered, "This is trending in real time. Don't cut away." Grant's voice stayed calm. Attention was never my goal. Accountability was. You and I both know this industry rewards appearance over truth. Olivia smiled, but the edge of it was razor sharp. Easy for you to say when you're not the one holding a live show together 5 days a week. You write in isolation. I deal with real people, real pressure every morning. Grant nodded slowly. And maybe that pressure forces you to choose the softer version of reality. Something in Olivia snapped. You sit there acting superior because you're hiding behind pages and clever metaphors. Try doing my job. Try smiling through a breaking story. Comforting a family who's just lost someone, holding it together when a guest falls apart. That's not lying, Grant, that's humanity. A low murmur rippled through the audience. The tension wasn't just visible, it was contagious. Grant tilted his head. Maybe, but humanity also means honesty. And sometimes the kindest thing we can do is stop pretending everything is fine. The words landed harder than either expected. For a moment's silence. Then Olivia laughed softly, too softly. So you'd rather make everyone miserable in the name of truth? Not miserable, Grant said. Aware. The producer's voice came through her earpiece again. Olivia moved to the next segment now, but she ignored it. You know what I think? She said, leaning forward. You envy what you criticize. You tried to build a career in television once, didn't you? And it didn't work. So now you tear down everyone who did. Grant's jaw tightened for the first time. That's a cheap shot. Is it wrong? Grant looked toward the camera, then back at her. I walked away from television because I didn't want to become what I'm looking at right now. Gasps. The audience couldn't tell whether to clap or cringe. Olivia's eyes widened, then hardened. Security, keep ready, someone whispered in the wings. She set her cue cards aside. You're enjoying this, she said quietly. You came here to humiliate me on my own show. Grant shook his head. You're doing that yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. For the first time in years, Olivia felt the weight of the cameras not as friends but as witnesses. Every second of her face, anger, disbelief, wounded pride, was being broadcast to millions. Then Grant spoke again, softer this time. You built something extraordinary here, Olivia. But maybe the reason people are starting to question it is because they want something real from you, not the performance. Just you. Olivia blinked rapidly. The words weren't cruel. They were honest. And somehow that honesty hurt more. A producer finally cut to commercial, the bright jingle bursting through the speakers like a sudden floodlight. The studio crew exhaled as if surfacing from underwater. But the cameras inside the set didn't stop recording. Olivia stood, turning away from the table. Grant remained seated, flipping his book closed. You think you understand me? She said without facing him. I think I understand what the spotlight does to people, he replied. She turned back. No, you understand what the spotlight looks like from the outside, not what it costs. Their eyes met, hers blazing, his steady. Then tell them, he said. Tell them what it costs. The commercial countdown hit 5 seconds. The stage manager gestured for them to sit, to reset their smiles, to pretend the storm had passed. Olivia sank back into her chair, inhaling deeply. The theme music faded, and the red light above the camera blinked on again. "We're back," she said, her tone smooth but her voice trembling beneath. "We've been speaking with author Grant Mason about his new book, The Hidden Lens. Grant, before we continue, do you believe people like me should just disappear?" Grant frowned slightly. "No, I believe they should evolve." Olivia nodded, lips pressed into a thin line. "Maybe evolution looks different from where I'm standing." The audience clapped uncertainly. On screen, the smiles looked professional again, but everyone in the studio could feel it. This wasn't over. As the show moved to a cooking segment and cameras panned away, Olivia whispered under her breath, just loud enough for the mic to catch it, "This isn't finished." Grant's quiet answer, "I know." And that's how Morning Horizons crossed the point of no return. The moment the broadcast cut to its final credits, the studio dissolved into a blur of motion. Crew members swarmed the floor, some pretending to adjust lights or cables just to avoid eye contact. The tension still hummed in the air like static after lightning. Olivia Ward stayed in her seat for a long second, breathing through her nose. Her fingers clenched around a cue card until the paper tore. Grant Mason gathered his book and a half-empty cup of water, calm as ever. Her producer, Maya, hurried over. "Liv, we need to talk now." Olivia rose without answering. She could feel the eyes on her. Camera operators, assistants, interns, all pretending not to stare. Grant slipped a polite nod in her direction. "Good conversation," he said evenly. She ignored him and walked off the set. Inside the control room, a dozen monitors replayed the moment when she'd called him jealous and he'd said, "I didn't want to become what I'm looking at right now." The clip was already trending. The social media manager's phone kept buzzing. "Morning meltdown," someone muttered. Maya closed the glass door behind them. "Olivia, we have a problem. Clips are spreading everywhere. Some people are calling it brave. Others say you lost control." Olivia pressed her palms against the counter. "I told the truth." "You told your truth on air while management watched the ratings chart. Spike and crash at the same time." Olivia stared at her reflection in the dark. Monitor. Mascara smudged just enough to betray how hard she'd been holding it together. "They loved it when I smiled through fake tears. Now they're shocked when I actually show emotion." Maya sighed. "You know how this works. They'll want a statement. Something polished." "Polished," Olivia repeated, almost laughing. "That's the word that got me into this mess." Meanwhile, Grant was escorted down the hallway by a junior producer who looked terrified. Reporters were already waiting outside the studio doors, shouting questions about whether the argument had been scripted. Grant paused before exiting. "Tell Olivia it wasn't personal," he said to the young producer. The kid nodded, uncertain, and watched him disappear into the swarm of microphones and camera flashes. Back inside, Olivia sat on the edge of her dressing room chair, scrolling through notifications. Her name was everywhere: clips, memes, reaction videos. Some called her unprofessional. Others hailed her as the only host with guts. She tossed the phone aside and looked at the mirror. The lights around it felt too bright. "You wanted real," she whispered to her reflection. "You got real." A soft knock came at the door. Maya stepped in again, holding a tablet. "They want you upstairs." "The network head's already seen it." Olivia followed silently. In the elevator, her mind replayed Grant's words. "Tell them what it costs." When the doors opened, 3 executives were waiting in the glass conference room: Michael from PR, Diane from programming, and the network president, a silver-haired man named Richard Dale who rarely appeared before noon. Richard didn't waste time. That segment was a disaster and a goldmine at the same time. Michael added, "You trended higher than any episode this quarter, but sponsors are nervous. GMA's team is mocking us already." Olivia folded her arms. "So what do you want me to do? Apologize for feeling something?" Diane shook her head. "We want to control the narrative. You'll issue a brief statement tomorrow. Something like passionate discussion, mutual respect. We'll invite Grant back for a follow-up interview in 2 weeks." Olivia stared at her. "You want me to bring him back?" Richard leaned forward. "Audiences respond to conflict. Give them closure. Play nice. A laugh escaped Olivia before she could stop it. Closure? You think this is a storyline? Everything on television is a storyline, Richard said. She didn't answer. The meeting ended with polite phrases that meant nothing. Outside the studio, dusk had fallen. A few fans waited by the barricade, holding signs that read, "We stand with Olivia," while others yelled, "Team Grant." It felt like the entire country had chosen sides within hours. Olivia pulled her coat tighter and slipped into the back seat of her car. Her driver hesitated before asking, "Home, Ms. Ward?" She hesitated. "Take me to the pier." The city lights flickered on as they drove. She watched reflections of her face in the window, half lit, half shadow. At the pier, the wind bit through her coat. She walked to the railing and let the cold air wash away the studio heat still clinging to her skin. For the first time in years, there was no teleprompter, no countdown, no direction in her ear, just silence. Her phone buzzed again. A message from an unknown number. You were right. They want comfort, not truth. She read it twice, then tucked the phone back in her pocket. In the distance, a ferry horn echoed over the water. She thought of the show, of the producers already cutting together teaser clips for tomorrow's broadcast. The machine would keep turning no matter what it did to her. But deep down, she also felt something she hadn't in years. Relief. The mask had cracked and the world had finally seen what lay underneath. She turned from the water, her expression set. If the network wanted closure, she'd give them something they'd never forget. Tomorrow, Olivia Ward would walk back onto Morning Horizons. Not as the smiling host, but as the woman ready to burn the script. When Olivia Ward walked into the Morning Horizons studio the next morning, every conversation stopped. Crew members pretended to adjust lights, check clipboards, fix microphones, anything to look busy. Her heels clicked against the polished floor, the rhythm steady, deliberate. She had spent the night rewriting her monologue herself. No producers, no publicists, no network approval. The pages were folded neatly in her hand, still warm from the printer at her apartment. Maya, her producer, intercepted her halfway to the set. What are you planning? PR already sent a statement draft. We can still release it before airtime." Olivia gave a small, tired smile. "You've known me long enough to guess," Maya sighed. "They'll fire you if you go off script again. Then they'll have to find someone else to fake a smile every morning." Olivia stepped past her and took her seat on set. The lights flared to life. The crew had stopped whispering now, every eye trained on her. Even the stage manager, usually quick with countdowns, hesitated before calling out, "Live in 3, 2, 1. The theme music began. Olivia looked straight into the lens, her expression calm but unguarded this time. "Good morning," she began. Yesterday's conversation with author Grant Mason became more personal than any of us expected. I could stand here and tell you it was just passion, that we both meant well, that everything is fine. But that would be another performance, wouldn't it? In the control room, Richard Dale and the executives watched from their screens, hands tightening around coffee cups. Olivia continued, "For years, I've told stories designed to make you feel better about the world. We called it uplifting. Sometimes it wasn't the full truth. And I told myself that was okay because maybe people needed the illusion more than the honesty." The camera operator swallowed hard. You could feel the silence stretching out across living rooms everywhere. She held up Grant's book. "Yesterday, a guest accused us of selling comfort instead of truth. I was angry, maybe because he was right." Maya closed her eyes in the control booth. "She's doing it," she whispered. Olivia leaned closer to the desk, her tone softer now. "I've spent my life in front of cameras, and somewhere along the line I started thinking being liked was the same as being real. But truth isn't always likable. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but maybe that's what we need." Social media lit up instantly. Viewers began clipping her words, typing captions. "Olivia Ward breaks silence, live. Morning show host speaks truth about TV industry." Richard muttered under his breath, "She's hijacking the broadcast." Maya didn't answer. She was smiling. Olivia continued, "So today I'm not going to read from a teleprompter. I'm not going to ask you to smile through your morning coffee. I'm going to tell you what it feels like to hide behind one for 20 years. She took a deep breath. "It feels like drowning while looking perfect." The studio was still. The sound engineer forgot to breathe. Then she straightened her papers, glanced once more at the camera, and said quietly, "This show has been my home, but if being honest means I can't stay here, then at least I'll leave as myself." The red light above the main camera blinked off. Someone in the booth had cut the feed. Half the crew gasped. Olivia looked toward the control room window, seeing Richard's silhouette through the glass, one hand raised in frustration. The commercial bumper rolled. A producer rushed over. "Liv, they pulled the segment." "You're off air," I figured, she said calmly. Richard stormed onto the set moments later. "What was that?" "Do you have any idea what you've done?" "Yes," Olivia said, meeting his eyes. "For once I said something that mattered. This network doesn't survive on confessions. It survives on control," he snapped. "Then maybe that's the problem." Maya stepped in quickly. "Richard, she didn't attack the network. She spoke about the system. People are responding. Look," she turned her tablet toward him. The feed was filled with real-time reactions, hashtags flooding every platform. Richard glanced down, his expression shifting as he read the comments. "Finally, someone honest. She said what everyone thinks. Don't cancel Olivia." He exhaled sharply. "Fine, let the fire burn for now, but she's suspended until further notice." Olivia's reply was simple: "Make it permanent," and she walked off the set. Outside, the morning air hit her like freedom. Reporters had gathered again, shouting questions, but she didn't stop. She crossed the plaza, phone vibrating endlessly in her pocket. She ignored every call, until one name flashed across the screen. Grant Mason. She hesitated, then answered. "Impressive." His voice came through. "You did what I couldn't." "I didn't do it for you," she said. "I know. That's why it worked." A long pause. "They'll come after you," Grant said. "Networks don't forgive rebellion." "I'm not afraid of losing a job," Olivia replied. "I'm afraid of losing myself." "Then maybe you've already won." The line went quiet. Olivia looked up at the city skyline. Billboards glowing, screens filled with faces selling perfection. For years she'd been one of them. Now she wasn't sure what came next. But for the first time, that uncertainty didn't scare her. It felt like possibility. 3 days after Olivia Ward's on-air walkout, Morning Horizons looked different. The opening music still played. The cameras still panned across the sun-soaked studio, but the seat she'd occupied for nearly a decade sat empty, lit by a single overhead beam like a reminder of absence. Viewers noticed immediately. Ratings jumped again, not from excitement but curiosity. Where was she? Would she return? The network said little. A brief statement scrolled across the ticker. Host Olivia Ward is taking personal time. But outside the studio, the story was just beginning. Olivia spent those 3 days in a small coastal town, the kind of place where no one cared about television. The ocean stretched endless and gray, gulls wheeling through the wind. She woke early, brewed her own coffee, and listened to the quiet hum of a world that didn't need her to fill every silence. Her phone buzzed with hundreds of messages, some furious, some grateful, some desperate for interviews. She ignored them all until Maya's name appeared. "Maya, they're running a panel tomorrow, talking about authenticity in media. Guess who they didn't invite?" Olivia smiled faintly. "Olivia. Good, let them talk. I already said what I needed to." Still, a small part of her wondered if she'd gone too far. Not because she regretted her words, but because she finally understood how fragile truth could be in a world built on illusion. That night, she walked along the shoreline until the wind bit through her jacket. Every breaking wave sounded like applause fading into the distance. She stopped, staring at the horizon, dark sky, faint stars, and whispered to herself, "What now?" The answer came the next morning. Her inbox overflowed, not with corporate emails, but with stories. Hundreds of them. Viewers, interns, journalists, even rival hosts writing to say how her words had cracked something open. A single subject line caught her eye. "Let's build something new." Grant Mason, the message was short. "You spoke truth on borrowed air. Let's create a place that doesn't borrow." Attached was a rough outline, an independent digital show. No sponsors, no scripts, no filters. Just conversations that mattered. Olivia read it twice, then a third time. It wasn't a career move. It was rebellion in blueprint form. By the end of the week, they met at a quiet cafe halfway between the city and the coast. Grant was already there, scribbling notes in a journal. "You look free," he said as she sat down. I look unemployed, she corrected, though a hint of amusement crossed her face. He slid the notebook across the table. A working title, The Unfiltered Room. She raised an eyebrow. Too on the nose. Maybe, but honest. They talked for hours about guests they'd invite, subjects mainstream shows avoided. The kind of truth they both thought television had lost. At one point, Grant leaned back. You realize this could fail spectacularly? It already did once, she said. And I survived, he smiled. Then let's risk it again. A month later, the first episode aired online. No glossy set, no audience applause, no network logo. Just 2 chairs, a table, and an unedited live stream. Olivia introduced the show in the simplest way possible. Good evening. I'm Olivia Ward, and this time there's no teleprompter. The comments exploded. Support, curiosity, disbelief. But as minutes passed, something else appeared. Silence in the feed. People weren't arguing. They were listening. Grant nodded across the table. You found your real voice. She shook her head slightly. We found a place that didn't try to take it. Weeks turned into months. The Unfiltered Room grew from a quiet rebellion into a movement. Journalists, artists, even former hosts came on to speak without scripts. Viewers called it dangerous honesty. Olivia called it finally breathing. The old network eventually moved on, filling her chair with a new face, bright and cheerful, ready to smile through headlines. But the audience had changed. Once they'd seen the curtain pulled back, they couldn't unsee it. One evening, Maya visited the new studio, a small converted loft filled with cameras, cables, and the smell of strong coffee. She looked around, grinning. You really did it, Olivia shrugged. Did what? Built something that doesn't need permission, Olivia smiled. Guess we stopped mistaking comfort for truth. Later that night, when the crew had gone home and the city had quieted, Olivia stood by the window, watching the lights flicker below. Her reflection stared back. No makeup, no lighting tricks, just her. She remembered the first time she'd ever been on live TV. Terrified of mistakes, desperate to please. Now, she realized, the best thing she'd ever done was break the illusion she'd spent years perfecting. Grant's voice called from behind her. Ready for tomorrow's guest? Always, she said. As long as it's real. He nodded, switching off the last light. Outside, the skyline shimmered like a new beginning, and for the first time in her career, Olivia Ward didn't feel like she was performing. She felt alive.